Uh, he's on.
Okay.
Hi, David.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, David.
Okay, there's a bit of a lag. That is not good.
Oh, but we can hear you.
Yes, but I hear myself twice.
Oh, maybe there's some echoing.
No, it's okay now. All right. So, uh, those of you who don't know me, my name is David Margulies, and I am also known as Doghouse in Telegram. And I'm a gadfly. My job is to irritate people to make them do better, like the sand in an oyster that makes the pearl. I don't make the pearl, I irritate the oyster to make the pearl. And I'm very good at being irritating, as Orchid will tell you. So I'm supposed to talk to you about WPS, and I want to back up just a little bit. EOS is an operating system created for businesses on the blockchain. No first version of a software release is without bugs or without a need for patching. Anyone here old enough to remember Windows 1.0? It was a nightmare, and it wasn't calmed down until 3.1. That's something to keep in mind. So who will be responsible for providing support for the maintenance of this operating system, as well as the development and addition of new features as required? The block producers and the volunteers who've been working very hard to build this grand gesture, this grand venture, have been working very hard. But reliance on the block producers, as Mao pointed out, flies in the face of decentralization. We can't call ourselves decentralized if we give more money, more power, more authority to 15 out of 21 out of 400 block producers. And the idea that volunteers could do everything is just silly. In the long term, volunteerism is not sustainable, and it's not good for the ecosystem's health. So how about Block One? Can we rely on Block One? Block One did an excellent beta release. It's a beta. But for EOS to live up to expectations, we can't rely on Block One. They promised a number of key features that have not come to fruition, and we need to build these soon. These include a properly funded core arbitration, key recovery, IBC, storage, referenda tools, a usable user interface, and a functioning worker proposal system. Hey, who's that?
It's me.
Hi. I took your slot. So the WPS group is working to build a set of tools and the workshop needed to build out the rest. By using a portion of the inflation that's been set aside for these necessary projects, we can increase and improve the utility of EOS and its overall adoption. All right. Bootstrapping any decentralized process is complicated and daunting. There's a number of things to build, a number of things to fix. Things happen simultaneously and they're interdependent. There are ideas to nurture and many people to organize. The first referendum that's planned is intended to minimize the, it's intended to do the minimum needed to grow the WPS. So the first referendum vote will allow the WPS group to bootstrap the worker proposal system, the WPS. It will allow you, the token holder, to get a sense of what the WPS could be capable of without risking too many resources. And this is what you'll be voting for. Funding, an initial amount of about 10 days of the accumulated savings, so 1 million tokens, will be moved from eosio.saving account to the eosio.wps account. Only this amount can be used for the purposes initially proposed. It's a cap. This fund is a ceiling on the first 6 months' activities, and there's little expectation that it will be all used. Anything that's left over at the end will be burned when we wrap up the bootstrapping phase. What else will you be voting for? You'll be voting for the emergency committee. The emergency committee exists to handle urgent needs rather than a specific type of project. This is the only category, and I'll talk more about categories later, that will be included in the first referendum, but it will be used to help launch the other categories through worker proposals. core activities that you'll be voting on include setting aside budgets for the EOS-IO Core Arbitration Forum, the EOS Mainnet Code Repository Management, security testing, and the operations of the Emergency Committee. So the categories that I mentioned before, you will also be creating the category system. We will be setting the worker proposal categories and the definitions of their boundaries. And again, more on this later. But this structure is intended to allow the greatest variety of governance options while we figure out what works best and limit any scope for abuse or failure. So rather than playing with the entire savings account and let it be stolen or wasted, we're going to limit every activity so that only the smallest amount is risked at a time. And finally, the first referendum will include an open call for governance design proposals for individual categories. This will, in the second phase, we will have an open call for people to suggest structures for the different categories. All right? And you really are wondering what the categories are, but let me go on. The second round of voting, not the first referendum, but the second round of voting, will put forward a selection of proposals for the governance of the different categories. These, the Emergency Committee will manage a WPS competition for individual category governance structure designs to allow for experimentation with governance without a risk to the whole ecosystem. At this stage, each category will be limited to its own financial boundaries with a cap of 10% of the EOS-IO.WPS account. And this, again, limits what can be done. And this also allows a great deal of the savings to be set aside for future growth if and when token holders decide on it. As each category is approved, the category in question becomes active and gets access to its 10% of the WPS account for its projects. When the category goes live, the Emergency Committee surrenders any control over relevant proposals, and they go to the category in question. Over time, the Emergency Committee ceases to exist. Its duties are absorbed in the categories, and it goes away. I don't know how many of you here in Asia are familiar with forest management, but right now on the west coast of the United States, there are a lot of forest fires. And one way that forest rangers often prevent forest fires is by starting fires in the wet season. They burn small patches of forest because that stops too much junk from accumulating that will cause a massive catastrophic fire. So as any new system is rolled out, there may be problems, and there may be abuse vectors that we haven't considered. The WPS and the category governance structures are no different. There could be things that we haven't figured on yet. Therefore, until such time as there is community confidence in the various government structures, we propose a standing burn on all funds in EOS-IO.saving not allocated to .IO WPS. Because each category is limited to 10%, and there are 5 categories, half of EOS-IO.saving would automatically be burned on an ongoing basis. We are also proposing that the balance of EOS-IO.saving that will have accrued is burned when EOS-IO.WPS is first funded. So we start without a lot of brush on the ground that could be a worse forest fire. Now, you've wondered about categories, or I hope you've wondered about categories. So there are 5 categories, and I will explain each one. Oversight. Well, each category will give you an idea of future proposals and indicate what governance structures would be a good fit. And I really want you to think about what would be a good fit. Oversight is a category for WPS portal maintenance, quality control, oversight of other categories, as well as supporting any proposals that go through direct referenda instead of the WPS. While the build is ongoing, these essential duties will probably be handled by the emergency committee, and most likely the best government for this key category is some form of committee or representative body. The next category is infrastructure. This category is for supporting the underlying code base of the blockchain. This includes security audits, bug patches, and code repository maintenance. The next category would be community. This category supports the resources and spaces that bring people together. So this would include meetups, educational content and platforms, public relations, lawyers, advocates, lobbyists, whatever we need for the community functions. The fourth category would be development, and this category is for supporting developers and ideas. So this includes support for decentralized applications and applications that may not be necessary for, that may be necessary for underserved minorities. So maybe you'll choose to run this district as a pure democracy and everything gets voted on by the community. Good luck. The last category is miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is for swag, for burning, and projects that don't really fit into other categories. The potential here is vast and unknowable. I can't imagine what the community is going to come up with. And I don't know the best way to govern it, but hopefully somebody will come up with a good idea. So I know I went really fast. I'm trying to make up some of Orchid's lost time. But finally, what do we need from you? In the near term, we need governance proposals for the categories. 1. In the medium term, we need worker proposals for worker proposals. That's 2. And 3, and this is most important, from now until the end of EOS, we will always need informed and engaged voting. Get yourself informed, and when